haven't tried the Locklicious all-natural hair care product line? Well, let's hear what the Lock community has to say about it.
I love how it sprays and how it feels, you guys. Like, it feels so good. And it smells amazing, you guys.
The Lock and Twist moisturizer was really good for me. The hydration mist was phenomenal.
This is bomb, baby. I was really impressed, kind of blown away, and I think that if you're struggling, definitely go check them out.
And check out the 5-star reviews on our website. So, what are you waiting for? Go to locklicious.com to start treating your crown like royalty.
I wash my natural hair and my face with the same product because natural hair care is easy. Natural skin care is easy. Don't make it hard.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and shalom. Good evening, everyone, and shalom. We are here. We are live. I want to say shout out to my brother in the building, my brother Chief Uzziel.
Shalom, my brother.
Shalom. This interview that we're going to have tonight has been a long time coming. For a while now, I had you on my radar to interview you. You're usually the person who is interviewing others. You're usually the interviewee.
Correct.
Well, the interviewer. And I'm usually the interviewee and others are. So it's
Right.
a nice switcheroo for people to see you on maybe the hot seat in a sense. And also just to see the redirect of questions and answers coming your way might be
Right.
different for a lot of people that are familiar with you. So the first thing I want you to do for us is I want you to tell us about your upbringing, what led you to the city of New York. If you could tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Oh, okay. I was born in a country in Central America called Panama. Most people know it for the Panama Canal. It's an isthmus. So what an isthmus is that on both sides it's surrounded by oceans, and it connects two big large land masses. So Panama is Central America, right smack dab in the middle of everything, and it connects South America to North America. I was born in a city called Colon, Colon. We will say colon, but in Spanish you say Colon, which is basically the city of Columbus, right? Colon is Columbus. My mother migrated to the United States when I was young. She left me and my brother, and then later she got us up here. I came up here in January 1986, and that was my journey. Migrated, lived in an apartment with my mother, and my brother later came and joined us, and that was the story of us getting to the United States. Got here at 10 years old.
Okay, and when you guys came straight to Brooklyn?
Straight to Brooklyn. I came from a tropical place straight into cold. So that was a culture shock to me.
That's what I was going to ask you. So if you can, describe for us, apart from the climate, what was the culture shock for you leaving Panama, coming to the hub of America, New York City at that? Explain that culture shock for us.
Well, coming from Panama, we were living in what you would consider a suburb, right? Nice place, everybody. It was, when my mother bought that house, it was newly built. All the people there, all the kids grew up together. When I got to New York City, it was, like I said, the cold and just the people, having to put on coat, Vaseline. I never wore that much Vaseline on my face and on my body, you know. And then being inside all the time because it was cold, you just couldn't go outside, you know, like that. The culture barrier, like the language. Although I knew English from Panama, because my grandmother in Panama, the culture is you have a lot of English-speaking people because you had a lot of people that came from the Caribbean islands, specifically Barbados and Jamaica, and all the other islands. But when they were building the canal in the early 1900s, the American people needed people that knew how to speak English. So a lot of the people from Barbados and Jamaican, they ended up in Panama. They ended up in certain cities like Cologne, certain provinces like Cologne, Bocas del Toro, places like that where you would see a lot of Black people. And what they did is they kept the English-speaking culture. They didn't want their children to learn Spanish, right? And so they opened up English-speaking schools. But eventually, you know, after being there over 50, 40, 60 years, the kids begin to, you know, go out and speak Spanish, and you learn both languages. So my generation, I knew English, I understood English, but I always spoke Spanish. But if you spoke to me in English, I knew exactly what you were saying. And if I needed to speak, I spoke it because that's all my grandmother spoke to me. And, you know, so coming up here, the culture shock, you know, my mother, when I left Panama, it was in January. School had just finished. My mother put me back in school right, you know, the middle of January, put me right back into 5th grade. So needless to say, you know, in Panama, you wearing uniforms. Here, it's about a fashion. You know, you starting to see everybody with different, you know, gear, and you're not using the same stuff every day. But, you know, what you realize is that everybody was going through poverty and everybody was poor, and, you know, and that's what it was. But, you know, it was rough at first because my mother didn't put me in a bilingual class. She put me straight in an English class. So she was like, sink or swim. You know, I'm not gonna put you in a bilingual class because you know English. So I came in the middle of the school year, finished out. You know, I passed. You know, so I didn't sink. I passed. You know, and I moved on to the 6th grade, and I would have to say that and when I was in the 5th grade, I had like 2 girls that really looked out for me. Because the wolves were around me. Who's this Spanish-speaking Black guy?
Yeah.
And they took a liking to me. Yeah, they took a liking to me.
That was going to be my next question for you. So I want you to describe for us, from your eye view,
Right.
What was it like growing up in New York City in the mid to late 80s? Again, you coming from Panama and knowing what Panama was like. I know you're still young, you're 10 years old, but describe for us how you took in New York City. Were there any major differences in terms of how people acted? Yeah.
Absolutely. When you in Panama, it was laid back. Things weren't moving as fast. You didn't have a big you didn't have a crack epidemic in Panama at that time, 86, 85. When I came here, you know, I used to walk to school 191. And I used to see all these little vials on the floor. I didn't know what they were, but I know that the streets were flooded with them. I used to see lines because when the path that I had to walk, now I know they were drug spots. There used to be lines around the corner. And I was like, why do all these people, you know, like, what are they selling out of that building? Like, why are they standing on, you know, being a child, you really don't understand.
You don't know.
And really don't know. So, you know, that was the culture shock, and going to school, the language barrier, just, you know, how people were so, you know, you had nice people, but you also had people that, you know, that were rude, and you had to adjust real quick because being nice sometimes was taken as, you know, your humility was taken as being weak. And I learned that real quick. You know, I learned that real quick, that I knew I had hands, and I had to apply those real quick, because I didn't I couldn't be a suck ass, they would say during those times. So I assimilated real quick through hip hop, and I had 3 girl cousins that were here already before me, so they taught me the ropes real quick.
When you say you had hands, are you referring to prior training in Panama?
Yeah, in Panama there's a famous gym called La Cajita de. Go back over there. La Cajita de Fósforo. That's the little matchbox, and a lot of Panamanian champions came out of there. So what we would do is we would go there. My godmother lived right across the street from it. So during the summer, my mother would send me to my godmother's house, and I would go, because when I was younger, my mother, I would get beat up, when I was young. So she would send me by my godmother, and in turn, I would go to that gym. And there I started with the trainers. They would put us to work out, to spar, and then they taught us how to move. And what would happen is a lot of the white rich people from Panama would bring their sons there to fight, like teach them how to fight. And the trainers would take us, like the kids, the rough kids from the neighborhood, and be like, all right, now's your opportunity to, eat some food. Go ahead. And those used to be our punching bags. We used to beat those kids up. They never used to come back to the gym. They used to have all the new gear. You know how it is, like somebody coming with all the new gear and everything. And we used to just have like homemade hand wraps and all that. And we started lighting their behinds up. So that's where my hand skills, came up to par. And I that's where I started learning how to throw my hands. But I never really learned it to be a bully. I just learned it to defend myself.
Defend yourself, okay.
Yeah, because when you were young, you didn't. I don't have that type of spirit, like a bully spirit. So, okay. But I'm not gonna be bullied either.
Okay. Around what age would you say you were when you started to notice that New York City had gangs?
Oof. I noticed that right away, like junior high school. Because around where I lived at, you had the what do you call those guys? The low lives. They were from around, the neighborhood that I lived in. Low lives, Decepticons. You had all of them. In fact, the one of the leaders of the Decepticon who just passed away last year, Rumble, his brother happened to be one of the brothers that we grew up under, who was an Israelite, a brother by the name of Benaiah, who also passed away. You know what I mean? So we had the connection. We knew those guys. Like those are the gangs. Like during that time. At that time in New York City, you didn't have Bloods and Crips. You had more like the Jamaican gangs, like the Shower Posse. Right. You had and those were older gangs. You know what I mean? Right. But the younger gangs, it was like Deceps, Low Lives. I don't know if they were really a gang. They were more like a boosting crew. Mm-hmm. But if they had to, I guess they'll get busy. So those were the gangs that I really knew about, because they were concentrated in my area.
Okay, so the reason why I asked you that is because from what I know about you over the years is that, like myself, you came into the Israelite way of life very, very young. Very young, yes. I was 14 years old. How were you? Right. How old were you when you came in? I
was 13 years old. I came in March of 1989. Yeah, March of 1989 I came in.
All right. So, and around that time, I want you to just be as transparent as you can. Would you say that you was thinking along the realms of religion and spirituality, or do you think that the Israelites that you met just really had an impact on you to push you in that direction? What was the impetus?
What happened with me was I had my best friend at that time, Levan Rutledge. I lived in 1357 Eastern Parkway. He lived in 1351 Eastern Parkway. So he took a liking to me. He although I spoke Spanish, he managed to, understand everything I was saying, and we became real close friends. Now he was 5 years my senior, so I would follow him to wherever he would go. So he happened to one day, right around the corner from where we lived on Eastern Parkway between Ralph and Buffalo, right on Lincoln and Ralph, there was a group of Israelite brothers that used to congregate over there. So there was a block party or something, and he said a rhyme. He mentioned them in it. They invited him to come to some of the services, and I followed him, right? And that was my introduction to Israel. And when I followed him, I liked what they were saying. I wasn't really connecting with the Catholic church that my mother was sending me to. She would send me to the church with an envelope with money every week, and she wouldn't come to church. So, naturally I was like, I'm not going to church. I'm going to walk like I'm going to church.
You going to Flatbush Avenue or Utica Avenue.
Yeah, on Utica Avenue and
Pickens.
What was that? Eastern Parkway and Utica Avenue was the church, big Catholic church right there, still there, right across the street from the train station. So I would go to the early Spanish service because I wanted to get it out of the way quick. I didn't want to, if I had to go there, I was going to go there. But what I would end up doing was across the street, if you cross Eastern Parkway, there used to be a Hallmark store. And if you know about the Hallmark stores back then, they used to sell magazines. So the little $5 or $10 my mother would give me for the donation wasn't going into the donation. I would just go underneath the subway, go to the other side of Eastern Parkway, and sit there, buy like my Word Up magazines, Beat Street, I believe it was the name of a magazine, and that's how I learned how to speak and how to like the vernacular, like how to express yourself and in the way that everybody else was expressing themselves. So I will wait to see for the service to end, and then I'll walk. I'll get rid of that envelope, make sure I dump it somewhere where, because when you're doing wrong, you always think like somebody's gonna see you.
Of course. So as you're being now introduced to Israelites,
right?
Who would you say are among the very first notable Israelites that you meet? What are some of the people by name that you can remember yourself first meeting and developing a love or appreciation for?
The first person would be Prince Paul Ben Zavulun. He was the first person. He was the person who spoke to my mother, because my mother came and she wanted to know what I was getting into. And he was the one that had the conversation with her. And after that, my mother never looked back. She just kind of left me to them. I guess she figured at that time I needed like father figure, and she couldn't be a man. She did a good job in raising myself and my brother, but at that time I was already coming outside. You know what I mean? And when you're coming outside, you could choose either the right way or the wrong way. So my mother, she was like, well, if he's gonna do something with godliness and he's not doing anything on Friday nights and he's taking this seriously, I'm gonna just let him be. And if these guys saying that they're gonna take care of him, so Prince Paul was the first one. I remember also Chief Uzziel, Prince Shem, Chief Nathaniel, Chief Hezekiah. Those are Chief Eleazar. Those are brothers that were around when I first started coming around. I might forget other brothers. And there was a group of young brothers that were with me, but those were like the influences. And then later was Chief Amos, because he was away, I believe, like in Florida, doing something with some boxing. But those were the main brothers. Then later, like Chief of Chiefs will come through. Chief of Chiefs Naphtali Bane Naphtali made the Most High, God bless his memory. And also Chief Amos made the Most High, God bless his memory. Those were like the first set of Israelites that I met when I first came around that corner from my house on Eastern Parkway.
Okay, so as some people may know in YouTube world, but obviously many people in our community already know, you and I share some of the very same teachers. Like I can remember for me, my initial first impression of Prince Sapor Ben Zebulun, the spiritual leader of Shema Israel. My
Mm-hmm.
first time meeting him, he held a great stature in my eyes. You
Right.
know, he spoke with a very commanding voice. He spoke with great conviction. And I just always remember till this day that when Prince Sapor opens his mouth to speak, it's very hard not to be captivated by this
Mm-hmm.
man's words. So my
Mm-hmm.
question for you is, what was your initial impression of him as you're meeting him?
When I first met him, he just, it was like like a teacher, somebody who's teaching you, someone who is making an impression on you, and the things that you do and the way that you move. That was my impression of him, and then later it became more like if we go on in the interview, it became more like a father and a son, So that was my first impression of him. That what he's talking about, and things. He's teaching me about the Most High God. So those things were really important for me at that time, and give me my zeal and the way that I felt proud to be an Israelite. I think those are the things that Prince Sapor is good in, making you feel, the pride in being an Israelite, wearing your turban, wearing your culture, wearing the things that to represent as an Israelite. So definitely those are the things that he influenced me in, not being afraid of what. At that time, everybody wasn't wearing braids. It was only Israelites really that were wearing braids like that, right? And, being proud, it was a big thing to have your braids and your tzitzis and wear your kippah and stuff like that. So those are things that you learn. But besides the Torah, the understanding of Torah and the Tanakh, he was always influential with the children. He would pick up the children and bring them to his house, because that's where I first started doing services, in this apartment on Lincoln Place, between Buffalo and where him and his wife at that time, Deborah, lived. Between on Lincoln Place, between Buffalo and Ralph, and we would go there, and we would and there'll be teachers coming up there, himself, Chief Elazar, it was Chief Avinian and them didn't really teach. Chief Nathaniel spoke sometimes. You had I believe at that time, Chief Hezekiah might have been teaching. Yeah, he was teaching at that time already. I mean, you had, later, like I said, Chief Amos came on the scene because he was away for a little while. And so that, the impression was great. I'm still here, so he must have had a good initial impression.
That's a fact. So what I know from experience is that when the elders take you under their wing, surely they're gonna, give you some knowledge, put you under their tutelage, drop some gems. But elders love to go back into the history, right? That's one of the things that I especially love about the elders and being under an elder's wing, is that they make sure that the next generation knows the history of, how the legacy came into the continuity and the stage that it's in now. So as you're coming into the Israelite community in early 1989, what did you start hearing from teachers and leaders like Prince Sapor about some of the older congregations? Could you now segue the conversation and dialogue into describing from what you heard from these teachers, what were the schools of thought here in New York City or abroad that came before these group of elders?
Can you repeat the question? Because
okay,
I just want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Okay, so as a perfect segue now, one of the things about elders is that they bring you under their tutelage and they drop the knowledge on you, but they also make sure that they give you the history. So from these elders that you named, what did you learn about the prior Israelite camps and or institutions?
All right, so during that time, we weren't really that united. And just to be perfectly honest, You understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to get on an interview and be like, yeah, it was, you know, roses and everybody loved each other. Nah, it wasn't that way. You know, when I first came around, you know, there wasn't just fond things said about each other. And I'm sure that other congregations was doing the same thing. There wasn't really, you know, too much mingling. Of course, people knew each other. Like, there were people that knew each other and people would come visit and whatnot. But that was before the internet. So people would say stuff in their congregation, and, you know, you formed opinions about certain people without even knowing them. You know what I'm saying? And that was just that's just being real. Right. Like, that was the flavor of that time. You know, I can't put it no other way. Of course, there was reverence to certain people, you know what I'm saying? Because the branch where I come from would be more so Ben Azakin, right? But because you have Prince Paul, who was also from the branch of Hashaba Yisrael, which in those days, Hashaba Yisrael and Ben Azakin, before I even came around, there were kind of tension between the two congregations. You get what I'm saying? Right. So, you know, there was never, you know, until later, you know, fond things began to be said. But initially, you know, there were a lot of still feelings and things. And that's just being brutally honest, because I don't want people to look back at this interview and be like, oh, he just sweetening up everything, you know. Right. And of course, you had the brothers from that we used to call the Uptown Brothers. And with them, it was always like, you know, but what we doing now, like how we sit down and we speak with them, like a lot of the brothers who are in the forefront of those congregations that we call the Uptown Brother or the 125th Street Brothers, they weren't even around.
Let me stop you for a moment, because you're going a little ahead.
Oh, all right.
Of where I want to go. So I'm gonna stop you for a moment. I'm gonna say, okay, when he says the Uptown Brothers family, he's making a reference to the Messianic branch of the Israelite community, which at that time in New York City was predominantly in Harlem, which is what we consider as Brooklynites. That's uptown. Right. So for us Brooklynites who are Israelites, the Messianic branch of the Israelite community in New York City, they're predominantly in Harlem, New York. And Brooklyn is predominantly people who stand for the Old Testament or Torah only. So in our communities, we originally referred to Messianic Israelites as the Uptown Brothers. The term Messianic is a fairly new term. It's more so an internet term. Prior to the internet, nobody used those terms. We would call those groups of Israelites the brothers from Uptown. Right. All right. So I want you now, Chief, if you can, to speak towards the doctrine, because you leaving Panama and knowing what at some level Christianity is, you come into New York City where you get a culture shock of coming into a place that's almost completely different from Panama, not just in terms of topography and, you know, the terrain, but also in terms of behaviorism, mannerism, and culture. But now, adding to that, you're now introduced to a group of people known as Israelites, but the specific group of Israelites that you're introduced to are the ones who follow the Old Testament only. Right. Coming into that knowledge, what was that like for you? And how was that experience of you explaining this to your mother, that while you read the Bible, for you, that includes the Old Testament only? Well,
what was fortunate for me was that at that time, you know, like I said, my mother wasn't really very religious. She just knew that I needed to go to church. She figured, like, you need to go to church. But she wasn't going to church, and not because, I guess because she had to work, you know. But with me, you know, when I first heard that the Christ of the New Testament was not really God and anything like that, my mind was ready to hear that, right? And I was able to soak it in, and I was able to match up what was being told. because those are things, and during those times that were attacked, that Christian doctrine was attacked, a lot more. So it wasn't too much questioning, because these guys was like, these guys was not only, they were not only like scholars and teachers, but they were also like, you could get it. You know what I mean? You mess with us, you could get it. And don't mess with us, because you're gonna get it. So and I'm talking about in a real way, in a real way.
Oh, I know what way you mean. Yeah,
so in a real way. So, when you see that combination as a young man, you influence. You know what I mean? Because you see strength, and then you see the intelligence of being able to break down certain things and being able to explain that why he's not God, why he's not who they say he is, and you keep getting that fed every week, and you do research on your own, then that's how you get a person like me. Because that's what we, that's what was taught in our place of worship. And then you get fiery teachers like Chief Uzziel, you get Prince Paul, people that could really break both sides down and could really explain it to you. Those things were really instrumental in really allowing me to really see the what I needed to see and be able to develop and grow in my understanding.
Our teachers usually talk about a story, right? Of them marching up, going to Uptown to go and speak with the brothers from Uptown per se. Could you fill us in on what you are aware of or know about that story?
I don't know too much about that story. I know that there was an incident, something that happened in the streets, something at the slave theater. I don't remember that story too clear, but I know that that a few brothers, went up there and addressed the leaders at that point. They went all the way to Harlem, and they went, to talk, but knowing that they was in their territory, like I said, the understanding of us wasn't, always all peace,
That's a fact.
They went, they said what they had to say. They said what they had to say, but, we was, brothers was at their doorstep. That's what I got. They was at their doorstep, and then it was left off at that. But, those were, back then, that was a lot of ego, a lot of people, puffed up and stuff like that. Like one time, I remember we had a group called YOY. This is before it was SOG. This is when we were on Nostrand we were on St. Johnson Nostrand. If you go to St. Johnson Nostrand, right over would you see where the laundromat is at? Right over the laundromat, we used to have a place up there. That was Benezakin Yakai. And we used to have a group called YOY. So one day we call ourselves, they coming down to Brooklyn, they teaching in Brooklyn, they on Eastern Parkway and Utica. So we gonna roll on them. So we used to have, our uniform used to be the army fatigue, the black army fatigues with boots, with black Timberland boots. So we rolled up on them. We did some things we shouldn't have did, like, what I mean? We went up there and we flipped some signs and we did things like that. But our elders, being wise, they went up there and they must have had an intuition or something that we were going to do something, that we were trying to do something crazy. And they called us off. They rolled up right to the spot and they said, "Oi, leave that alone. Keep them moving." And we listened to protocol and we kept them moving. But, there were always little frictions. But I think throughout the years, we got to the understanding that, that's not going to get us anywhere. Right. You know what I mean? So right. It was like, we didn't like too much of that lake of fire talk. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That we're going to burn in the lake of fire.
Right. What he's referring to, guys, is our Messianic brothers, who, again, us Brooklyn Israelites we refer to as the Uptown brothers. when we would argue and debate with them, they would tell us that because we don't accept Christ as the Messiah, that we was going to burn in a lake of fire. We was going to burn in hell. So that's what he's essentially referring to. So now I want to say this to you, Chief. In the spring of 1996,
Right.
a year, right, or almost a year after Shema Israel opened,
Right.
I went to a Passover at the original One West.
Oh yeah.
This is spring of 1996. This is
crazy.
when there is no Captain Tazariak. Captain Tazariak is probably making pies in somebody's church somewhere. This is
crazy.
1996. This is when the brothers uptown, they used to look like they was on steroids. You remember they used to be like so big. Like anytime you used to see the brothers at One West, they looked like every single brother that was in their ranks. They looked like they was made in a laboratory. These guys were big and big.
I don't know where they were getting these guys. All these guys was like 6'3". I remember the day when we went, I was like, goodness, these guys are big. I don't know if we should be out here. These dudes is like 6'3", 6'1". They used to have these towering dudes, man. I'm like, where they getting these dudes from? You know what I mean? So they always got those brothers like that.
You know me, of Caribbean descent, Guyanese and Jamaican, I have some Jamaican friends that were Messianics, and they went to the original One West. Right. And one day, me and them are building, and they decide that they couldn't deal with me with the scriptures. So they said, I'll tell you what, there's a Passover coming up this week, and do you keep it? I said, yeah, we keep the Passover. I'm Israelite. And they said, all right, we invite you to keep the Passover with us at One West in Harlem. Right. So I said, I didn't really want to miss it because this was going to be my, I came into the Israelite way of life in 1994. So this was going to be my second Passover. The first one I spent with Beth Av Shalom, and the second and the rest, most of them I spent with Shema. So I didn't want to miss it, but I said, all right, let me do this. I'm going to go for the evening service. Right. The night before. So I went to the evening service, and right at the door, like I said, and as you know, their brothers are huge. You know, these brothers look like, every one of them look like they tall as Shaq, because I'm only 5'9". So to me, you a 6-footer. So to me, these dudes look like Shaq. Right. All right. So that was, you know, I don't want to say intimidating, because, you know, we come from Brooklyn, Chief. I think Brooklynites kind of built a little different, you know. So I don't want to say they were intimidating, but they were definitely impressionable. You was going to leave remembering them. Right. Right. So I get in the spot, and I have dreads, and I have my turban on. They tell me to take my turban off because I had a do-rag surrounding my dreads and a turban over it, and they really wanted the do-rag off. As you know, to this day, I still wear one. Right. So I didn't want to do all that. So that was an issue. Then one of their officers said, nah, leave him. He's good. So then the brothers that brought me there, they said, are you listening to the teachings? Are you starting to understand now? I said, nah, I still don't get it. I still don't get it. So he said, all right, in about 10 minutes is going to be the question and answer period. If you really feel you know this book, I dare you to stand up and ask them a question.
They trying to set you up.
Chief, I got to set this up for you. Because, again, this is 1996. So this is the all-star lineup of the original One West. These are all the guys that were on Jenny Jones. Remember when they were on the Jenny Jones show? These are all the guys that was on the Jerry Springer show. Remember when they were on the Jerry Springer show? These are all the guys that was on Phil Donahue show. They all there. So I'm looking and I'm recognizing that these are the guys I was just watching on TV. Right. And they putting the battery in my back. They saying, listen, you really know this book? I dare you to stand up and ask a question at the question and answer period. So when the time came, they said, does anybody have any questions? And I said, matter of fact, I do. And I stood up. And I remember when I stood up, everybody looked. First, because I'm a newcomer. You know, as Israelites, the first thing everybody focuses on in the Israelite setting is the New Jack. Right. And the original One West, as big as it was, and this is a big, big place,
Right.
Somehow I still stood out because I'm not wearing the fringes that they wearing, right?
Right.
My fringes are not, going along the border of the shirt. My
Right.
fringes hang down, right? So
Right.
I'm creating like this aura right now. So my first question was, I asked them, I said, why is it that you hold that Jesus is the Messiah? And then they explained. And then I explained why I disagree with that. And it wound up turning into a debate. And I got to tell you, the biggest officer from among them takes the mic from the guy that was debating me. And he said, hold on. And he takes the mic, commands it. And he says, I just want to remind you, young grasshopper, because that's how I look in comparison to them. So he said,
Right.
I just want to remind you, young grasshopper, be mindful of where you at as you trying to argue and debate with us.
Which he was right.
Right when he said that,
He was right.
all of the officers started to form a formation. There was officers on the left side and officers on the right side coming down the aisles, and they all stopped at my row on each end. So I said, listen, I'm not trying to disrupt your Passover. I got great respect for our culture. I got great respect for the Creator. But you guys said, if there's any questions, anybody could feel free. I said, I'm not being rude. I'm not being disrespectful, but I certainly have some questions. So to make a long story short, Chief, they threw me the hell out. Now, they didn't physically throw me the hell out, but when they called me out the aisle, they literally, about 15 to 20 guys on the left, about 15 to 20 guys on the right. This was a military formation, Chief. You had dudes on the left flank, on the right, that walked me out of the spot. And I said, yo, these dudes is different. Like, I could disagree with their doctrine. I could laugh at how they dress. But one thing that I left with was the respect for the formation. They was militant. They was organized. And anybody from the streets who's ever been a part of a real organization of men, I'm not going to say what we title it, but I'm going to say an organization of men. You know that one thing you respect when you see it is an organized group of strong men.
Absolutely.
So the reason why I segued with that, Chief, because this is your interview, not mine, was to ask you, have you ever been at all to a messianic meeting or in a messianic camp or temple in all of your years?
Nah, I can't recall ever being at one. We weren't a congregation. We weren't really, especially me, I wasn't really the one to visit too much. Mm-hmm. I kind of stayed where I was. I visited places similar to what the understanding that we had, but we didn't do too much visiting, or I didn't do too much visiting to other places. So I don't recall ever being in knowingly being in a messianic place. Like it doesn't come off the top of my head now.
Okay, so now the real reason why I asked you that is because now, if I would be a fair and balanced interviewer, I got to ask you some of the tougher questions too. So, okay, being an Israelite who was first and exclusively introduced to the Tanakh and Torah only, what was your exposure to Messianic brothers, where you could say, okay, I see why we disagree with them, so I'm going to remain here in Brooklyn. What made it for you that you never decided, well, let me go see what they're talking about, or let me go switch it up? Have you ever had an encounter where you actually watched their teachings on the corner, or ever spoke to them?
On the corner. Yes. Those were the encounters on the corner. We had we always would listen, and they would make sure they turned it up when like people like us walk past, you know what I'm saying? Downtown Brooklyn, down on Fulton Street, places like that. They'll make sure they turn it up, and it was always, we're gonna burn in the lake of fire. That talk always came up every time we would walk past them. You know what I mean? So if one of us individually walked past them, if you don't believe in Christ, so and so, this, that, and the other. So and then there was a debate one time at currently 297 Saratoga Avenue, Shema Yisrael, where I believe it was Chief Elquana, who used to work with some of these brothers, used to work in downstate hospital. So and I had that debate somewhere, man, and I lost it. But there was an agreement. They brought they best, debaters, and we were there, right? At Shema, they came, they agreed. It was, I forgot who was the big brother at that time who brought them. But the agreement was if we win, they would have to turn and only worship Yah. and if they won, then we would have to agree with them. Needless to say, you know how that debate turned out. They didn't they didn't win, but they loved arguing with each other. And this was a true story. They loved arguing with each other because they points, you know how it is when those debates go. You go into certain portions of the book that you can't refute, and then after that, by the time Prince Paul got up there and Chief Nathaniel and there was a couple other people that got up there and started speaking, and believe like Chief Naphtali Ben Don, and them. By the time they were done with those guys, it was like they was outside literally arguing with each other, about what happened inside. And but they never came. They never came. They never kept up their side of the bargain. So, you know how that goes.
Absolutely. So you coming up in the early 90s in the Israelite community, not only did you have the opportunity to see some of the most amazing Israelite contemporary teachers that we had to offer during that time, but because many of the teachers that we had were so influential, many of them drew celebrities near them. So now I want you to talk about some of the celebrities that you have met or have been around, such as your Zab Judahs, your Dougie Fresh, your Slick Rick. Talk to us about some of the celebrities that you met in the early 90s and what that was like for you.
Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick, Little Vicious. Who were the other ones? Carl Kanai. Who were some of the people that came through there? Also, Daddy-O from Stetson Sonic was from around the way. I know I'm forgetting some people, and somebody, when they see this interview, they're going to tell me about it. But Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick, what happened is that Dougie Fresh, I believe Chief Nathaniel brought him around. And once he met Chief Amos at that time, he was well off during that time, right? And Dougie Fresh was just rising through the ranks. And Chief Amos was very influential because Chief Amos is a very wise man, right? So a lot of people kind of gravitated to him. He was like the de facto leader of our set, but he would never like really wanted that leadership position, right? But in reality, that's how he was looked upon. That's by me, especially at that time. This is before the Shema days, right? So, people gravitated to him. He was a smooth brother. He, Dougie Fresh clung to him. Slick Rick will come down. Like, I will remember Dougie Fresh just being around. Like, he'll come around and he'd be there. If we was doing like a party and we needed we needed him to perform, he would just perform. You know what I'm saying? And that's what Dougie Fresh like you hear Keep Rising to the Top. He's talking about as a brother extended out his hand to me and asked me, will I rock the microphone? I just gave him a pound and I said shalom. So the brother who he said shalom to, that's Chief Nathaniel. When you look at the video, the brother who extends out his arm, that's Chief Nathaniel. And the I video to the Israelites. If you listen to Dougie Fresh first and only album, I believe, he talks about I'm like a lion from out, so the influence was there, from Israelites and being around it. Then Dougie Fresh brought around Little Vicious. We did security for Little Vicious. Brothers did security for Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick. Slick Rick one time came down to Brooklyn. This is when Slick Rick was hot, when that Adventures
Children's
of Slick
story.
Rick was out.
Yeah.
When Slick Rick was hot. He had all the Jews and everything. And we were up in Princey Paul's apartment when he used to live on Lincoln Place. And Chief almost said Slick Rick coming down or whatever. But this is Slick Rick. Like I'm telling you, he's hot like fish grease. His album is at the top of the list, hip hop list. One of the greatest albums at that time. They was talking about one of the greatest albums in hip hop. Slick Rick. I have to tell this story. So Slick Rick comes down from the Bronx because he lived in the Bronx. He took a cab all the way from the Bronx all the way to Brooklyn. So he calls like from the corner phone or something like, I'm here. So Chief almost sends me and his son, Molly, at that time. This has to be like 89, right? 89, 90, right? I think 89 or something like that. Like later part of 89, because we were wearing coats. So Chief almost sends me and Molly, say, y'all go get Rick because he down there and we don't want nothing to happen to him. So we children, like we could stop anything from happening to him, but you know, everybody in that neighborhood knew we were Israelites, and if you mess with one Israelite, you had to mess with everybody. So we go. Slick Rick is supposed to be on Lincoln Route. Slick Rick is walking around Eastern Parkway.
Oh my
God. Eastern Parkway between Ralph and Buffalo.
Ooh.
You had a gang called the Wolf. I believe it was part like of the Wolf Pack or something like that. There was like young dudes that were also like, and like they had like their little gang up there, but they was known as stick up kids, right? So Rick is in full Slick Rick mode.
Thick jewels,
everything, bracelets. He's in Slick Rick mode. The patch, the Bally's and the Wallaby Clarks. You know that thing like Wallaby Clarks with his long leather coat.
No security.
No security. But no security. But he got 2 9s sticking out of his coat pocket.
We know Rick. Yeah.
So, because I lived on Eastern Parkway, I knew the dudes over there, and I seen them scheming. So once they seen us grab him up, they was like, "Oh, he's with the Israelites." And we was like, "Yo, Rick, now you're going the wrong way. You got to come this way." So we took him around the corner. Rick was at that time. He was like, I remember we went to the liquor store, and he bought like, it must have been like 20 bottles of Moet. And then he used to like to drink like Dragon Stout. So he bought some Dragon Stout.
He's Jamaican.
So
he's definitely gonna have the Guinness Dragon Stout. Yeah,
the Dragon Stout. And I think he used to mix it with the Moet or something. He used to do crazy, but that was his thing. You know what I mean? So Rick was really out there. You know what I mean? Rick was out there. Dougie Fresh was a little bit more down to earth. You know, he a good brother. You know, always. And Rick was good people. Little Vicious met his manager Donovan. They used to come around. Dougie Fresh used to bring them around, and we did security for him a couple of times. Right around the time when he shot his leg. When Little Vicious shot his leg or whatever. So we had them. Carl Kanai.
That's the story that I wanted to make sure I get from you today. So if you can unpack the relationship between the clothing line creator Carl Kanai, who's considered basically the first Black urban creator of clothing, explain his relationship with not just the Israelites, but with y'all.
I used to see Naquan. His name we called him Naquan. We didn't call him Carl. That's the name he uses for that was the clothing, the brand. But I remember him when he used to be Naquan. And he used to have he used to sell like his clothes, I believe like it was S&D's. It was a store called S&D's, I believe. And what happened from the story, because I wasn't there in the annals of, like, I wasn't there sitting down when these things was happening, right? I remember he used to drive down. He used to have like a silver Mercedes, right? And he used to come down on the block. And, yo, what's up, Nate? What's up? I remember we knew he's so close. He was closer to Prince Shem. He was Prince Shem's friend, I believe. And from the story that I heard, you know, that's what I heard, that Chief Amos, who was like a person who was into fashion, he always wore Italian clothing and things of that nature. Like Chief Amos had, like, at that time, before used and damaged and all that came in, you know how you used to have the ripped jeans and then they would put a material inside of it and stuff like that? Chief Amos was already up on it. So from what I heard is, like, he gave him the jeans. He gave Carl Kanai, like, look, big man, look at this. And he gave him like 10 grand, you know what I mean? To start off, you know what I mean? Like, hey, to start off. And from there, you know, I'm not sure, you know, what happened from there, but I know we used to get a lot of Carl Kanai clothes for free.
Yes, sir. So I got to unpack this a little bit more, because I've heard this from you several times. I've heard it a couple times from the elders in the community. So I gotta add some of the things that I remember as well. So just to make sure that everybody is listening, in the late 80s, the clothing that we wearing is, we got on Nikes, you know, we got on Adidas, but we basically wearing church pants.
Right.
You know, your pants is like dress clothes. That was the dress of the 80s, and it was fresh.
Right.
Like how Run DMC would look. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? They would have dress pants, but they had on sneakers. That was the look. But what Chief Uzziel guys is saying right now, we had an Israelite elder among us by the name of Chief Amos, who was a very well-off brother and was into a lot of the newer styles that were coming in. And Chief Amos had saw ahead of the curve that wearing your pants baggy was going to be the new trend. So he gave Carl Kanai $10,000 and said, hey, I'm investing in you. Look at this style, replicate it, bring it back to the hood. Carl Kanai is not only the first black designer, but he's the one responsible for everybody wearing baggy jeans in the late 80s, early 90s. Right.
Well, actually, I just want to correct you, because it was cross colors.
Right, cross colors.
Yeah, because he went, I believe Naquan went to work for them first, and then from there he took off, right? So I think it was like cross colors first, but he took it, where you're correct is, he took it to another level. Like, it was like a sonic boom, boom, you know what I mean? And that time we was into rap. I remember like Prince Shem and Chief Amos getting boxes full of the Carl Kanai sweaters. Like, those were the joints. Like, that's what everybody wanted. Like, you know how a Champion hoodie or a polo hoodie, like people, and those times even like Carhartt hoodies, the Carl Kanai with the Kanai across the chest.
That big K. Oh man.
Everybody, we was good. We was good money. We was getting it passed down to us. So it was those were good times. You know what I mean? Those were good times, people passing through. You never knew, like, you know, when he blew up, I was like, wow, I know, you know, this guy, like, he wasn't my personal friend, but he was on the block. I said, what's up to him? You know what I mean? So you almost feel like a sense of you know, he made it, we all made it, you know, that sort of stuff. But
that's right.
You know, at the end of the day, what you realize is that people don't owe you anything, because they, you know, he put in the time with the sewing and the designing and doing a lot of the stuff that needed to be done in order to make his business successful and to make it happen. So, you know, I was proud, you know, I was happy and proud that somebody like that I knew.
If you can, Chief, tell us about your first time meeting Zab Judah, where you met him, if you remember specifically, and what that was like being in his presence at that time?
Zab Judah's father, Yoel Judah, was a member of the Israelite community. I mean, I guess, he's still an Israelite. His name is Yoel Judah. He attended the Camp Benezakim in the 70s, and I believe that early part of the 80s. He learned, I'm not sure if he learned, but I know one of his, I know that his teacher at Benezakim was Prince Rishadai with the martial arts.
That's
right? So Yoel Judah comes from a background of fighting and martial arts. He, in turn, turned that to, also Mark Breland. I forgot about Mark Breland. Mark Breland was very close with Chief Amos. Chief Amos was also a boxing trainer and manager. He managed Roberto Duran when he fought Iran Barkley. When he fought Iran Barkley for the, I believe it was the middleweight title at that time. That fight. Iran Barkley from Brooklyn, from Brownsville. Mm-hmm. Iran Barkley said, Iran Barkley manager or trainer said that, Iran Barkley said, I'll beat him after a night of having sex and drunk. I'll beat Roberto Duran. You know what I mean? Roberto Duran was about 36 or 37. He was already, people thought he was washed up over the hill. And Chief Amos met Roberto Duran, and from what I heard from the story, he met him in a salsa club in Manhattan. Roberto Duran was overweight. He was out of it. He wasn't fighting anymore. He had ballooned over 200 pounds. And Chief Amos told him, I'll make you a promise that if you listen to me, whatever. He gave him a gift. He gave him some money. And Roberto Duran kept his word. And he started training with Chief Amos. And they fought a couple of fights. And then Roberto Duran got the title shot, but he was going to just be like a walking stone for Iran Barkley. But Chief Amos got him in shape. He put him on that Israelite diet, on that Israelite science, got him in shape at 36 years old when people thought he was going to get massacred because Iran Barkley was knocking everybody out. Chief Amos got him in shape and he beat Iran Barkley, beat him up, took the title from him. You know what I mean? He took the title from him during that time, and Chief Amos was at the head of that. And then when Duran fought Sugar Ray Leonard the third time, Chief Amos was also his manager and one of his trainers in the corner. So if you look at the clips of the fight, you see a black man with a big afro, with speaking Spanish. That's Chief Amos. You know what I mean? And he was the one that was in and that was the third fight, with Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard. So yeah, I forgot about the boxing angle. So going back to Zab Judah, his father was a part of the Israelite community. So therefore, naturally, he names his son Zab Judah. I met Zab because I was at Gleason's gym. I was also training to fight. That's where I met him, in the gym, at Gleason's gym. He was already a well-decorated amateur fighter. When I met him, he was still an amateur fighter. But he was well-decorated. Me and Zab maybe like a year apart. Maybe he might be like a year younger than me or something like that. So that's where I met him. He was always a cool kid. He always spoke. He was always down to earth, with us, because he knew we was Israelites or whatever. So me and Zab always had a pretty cool relationship. But that's why I met him. I met him at Gleason's gym. And we was always good, cordial. His father, always, respected me. And that's where I met him at. I know that was the question that you asked me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just to, give some highlights. I remember it was around, I think, 98 that he sent Sports Illustrated to come to our temple, Shema Israel, to do a cover story on him, just to give the people kind of some awareness of some of the people that we were around.
Yeah, they did a cover story, which wasn't appreciated later by the leader, Prince of Court, because he was, those brothers, they weren't really coming around like that, but it was like they needed a place to, to say that they were Israel,
right,
or whatever. So, they reached out to us. It was okayed somehow, and that's what happened. It was one of those type of moments. You can't take it back, so you just live with it.
It was a moment in history.
Yeah.
The thing about historical moments is that they're not always going to be the best moments.
Right.
But when you look back, they're a highlight nonetheless, because at some point in our evolution, it represents a certain stage that we were at in life, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, it was a moment.
Absolutely. So what I want to say to you now is, I'm now segueing into about the 95, 96, 97, 98 era, which is the era that I'm coming into Shema.
Right.
I first came into Shema a little bit after they opened, which was the summer of 1995. I must have came up to Shema that October or that November. I remember meeting you. Now, a lot of people who have reputations are usually not aware of what reputation it is that they have.
Right.
But I remember that my first impression of you was that you had a reputation for being no nonsense. This is the mid-90s. You was in shape like a muck. You used to look like an action figure. I remember. All right. And because I'm born in 79, which makes you about 4 years older than me, and you being that much more taller than me, you was looking like the IUCPK dudes to me also. You know what I'm saying? And also, most people that know you now, they see you with the kippah on. Back then, you couldn't fit a kippah on. You wore a turban because you had dread sticking out of it.
Right.
Right. So it was in that era that 95, 96, 97, 98, my introduction in the Israelite community, and among the people that I'm meeting and also starting to look up to, you're that person for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're closer in age to me, but at that time, you were already in an authoritative position.
Right.
At that time, you were the recorder,
right?
All of the lessons that was happening in Shema Israel, and even going back before they were in Shema Israel, you were the recorder at that time. And those recordings were on cassette tape, and then it went digital to where you even doing it online now today. Right. And around that time is also the formation of a young body of men in our temple known as the SOG, the Sons of God.
Right.
Which is our own military organization within the camp, of which I was among some of the youngest members.
Right.
Now, I remember coming in one Sunday, showing off, because my father used to always work out, so he used to have us work out. So I remember showing off that I could do push-ups. And remember what I'm saying, guys, Chief Uzziel looked like an action figure. He walked by me, and he said, man, that brother ain't even doing push-ups. You're not even going all the way down. I started to get so pissed. Because at that time, I used to feel like, man, I can't get a decent shalom out of this guy. He just always mad. Again, from my eye view, you had a reputation, and your reputation, I would never say was nasty. You never had that, but your reputation was always no nonsense. You didn't play. People knew not to play with you. Grown and young alike knew not to play with you.
Right.
So this is also the time of the creation of the newspaper, the Third Eye News.
Right. Absolutely.
You remember that? So talk to us about the creation of the Third Eye News and some of the places that it actually went.
The Third Eye News was a creation or was an idea that was born out of the mind of one of my dear friends, Chief Naftali Ben Dan. He always looked at what FOI was doing, the Fruit of Islam and the NOI. I mean, what the NOI was doing, Nation of Islam, and he always said that we needed to, to do that, and they got their final call, and we need to have that. You know, he was always, from when we were very young, he was always thinking about nation building, right? So, and like SOG, it was a group of us, but he was like, him and Chief Uzziel, they were like the leaders of it, right?
That's right.
Because he had like the foresight, like the ideas, you know, the like we had the what do you call those things, that to fear God and keep his commandments is my whole purpose in life. I must love and honor God. I must love and honor my superiors. I must love and honor myself. I must love and honor, you know,
Our principles.
The principles, our principles. So he came up with all that stuff like at a young age. So he was already thinking way ahead of what I was thinking at that time. At that time, you know, like you said, I was vain. You know, I might have been serious, but when you that young and you working out and you know that your body look the way that it do, you know, you try to show it off sometimes and things of that nature. So he was already thinking about certain things and action. So he came up with the idea of the third eye. I remember he ran it by me, and I was like, I'm always one to support. So I did a couple of articles, you know, for it. You did some articles for it. You did quite a few. I believe you were like one of the main writers on it. And you that's when you began to see like your excellence with you know, the way you wrote, you know, very articulate. Even when you was teaching during that time, it was like very, very, very articulate with some of the things that you were saying. There you go. The Third Eye newspaper, mental slavery. There you go. Yep, that was it. And that newspaper would get into prisons. It was circulating into prisons. We would sell it on the street. It was very, very, very influential. It was very influential, and we would get letters from brothers in prison like, "Hey, can what's going on? Can we get when is the new issue coming out? When can we get it?" Because there was a lot of good information in there. There was a lot of good young writers and people that were dedicated to bringing forth information. So, yeah, definitely, my brother Chief Naftali Ben Don, salute. He was the one that really pushed it right there. Yep.
That's right.
There you go. That's yours right there. The Heritage Factor by Avdiel Ben Yisrael.
Now,
1998.
You gave me this picture. I remember talking to you a couple of years ago, and us just, you know, kind of reminiscing the past about this paper. And
right.
I forgot the exact year that it began, but it was about 1997. And I remember you saying, "Yo, I still got a bunch of them in my basement." And then you showed me a picture, and this is the picture. And I took a close-up on it, and I said, "Yo, man, like, you know, if we had the ego that some people think we as young men have, we would be going crazy with this, because when you look close at the year right. is 1998, man.
1998.
1998, we are already publishing articles about the Israelite awareness, the Israelite doctrine, and the articles is creating so much noise that it's even going to some of the major jail systems in the country.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
I remember that.
That says a lot.
I remember people writing us from prison and asking for it. You know, that's one of the things that I regret. We revised it again like in the 2000s, but it's, you know, you need consistency with that sort of stuff. And you need writers and people that are dedicated, that are going to write articles consistently and things of that nature. Yeah, because when we brought it back in color. I got a couple of those laying around also, you know. At that time, we were already grown. Our families were growing. And, you know, if you don't keep that chain going from one generation to another, you know, you're going to lose that. We were young back then. We didn't have any families yet. You were still teenager. I was 1998. I was just 98. I was 23.
I was 17, most of 98, but November of 98, I turned 18.
18, yeah. I was 23 in August of 98. So I was already, you know, at that time, 98. August of 98. When was my daughter born? She was born, 98, I believe. She was born in August of 98. So at that point, I'm already having a family and, things are starting to, be different. But we still young. We still young. We got time in our hands. We running around and doing, and just, just hanging, for the most part, working and hanging.
Believe it or not, Chief, that was my first introduction to writing. I took care, besides writing raps, because I did write raps, I wrote rhymes, but that was my first introduction. So the next question I want to ask you, Chief, is this. So, coming into the 2000s, you're a grown man. You have a family, you have children, right? Talk to us about the community of Israelites around the time of the 2000s, especially 1999, about to turn 2000. Because remember, the big thing in New York City among Israelites is that the Uptown Brothers, the Messianic Israelites at ISUPK, they said the world was coming to an end in 2000 and Christ himself was coming back. And I remember all of us laughing because we know that the scriptures say no man will know the hour, no man will know the day. But ISUPK was so, their conviction was so strong on this that this was actually in the papers that they used to circulate. Remember? The pamphlets that they used to circulate, it would say Christ is coming back in the year 2000 to bring back the Negro and the West Indian and bring us back to Israel. I want you to talk to us about that time period, Chief.
It was really critical because we understood like ain't no world ending in no year 2000, and there was really like some faction of them. I'm not sure if all of them did it, if that was a doctrine from the teacher up there, but I remember in Brooklyn there was a few of them that sold their homes, and they said that he was going to come in Coney Island. By Coney Island Beach. And so we began to, I mean, back then it was so much contention. It was like, you begin to tease, so we said, well, you might as well give us your car. You know what I mean? Ain't no sense of selling your house. Just give us the house, sign it over. You don't need the money. Sign the house over. We would do things like that. But eventually when that happened, they lost a lot of brothers behind that.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact.
They lost a lot of brothers behind that because once that became a false prophecy, people lost faith in it. And that's when you begin to see that like they didn't have like the great enough. It was a lot of splintered groups after that, from what I can remember.
That's around the time, yes.
Yeah, they started to split up. They started to split up a lot during that time because I guess some people didn't agree with that doctrine, but they had to go along, and some people, just were fed up with it and were, I guess I'm not in their business, so I can't speak for them, but that's what I began to see, during that time. It was a lot more groups and a lot more splinters started happening.
What I've come to learn from elder brothers like Priest Daniela, who, as you know, we started off rocky, but him and I have a great relationship today. In times past, when we would speak of this in brief, what he said is that during this time there were a lot of internal strifes going on. It was, as you know, when you got a large organization, elders are getting older, people are disagreeing on doctrine. You're going to have people getting up and saying, you know what, it's time to step.
And we sense that. We sense that because they weren't as like unified as they were before. Like you could sense it. You could sense, the different in the streets. It wasn't the same. It was, it was a semblance of it, but it began to be like when back then they were more uniform. They were more like into with the spikes and stuff like that, and the boots and the scarves and stuff like that. You begin to see brothers with T-shirts on and things of that nature. And it was like, nah, this is something different. You know,
Right.
it was slowly but surely, but you begin to see the difference and what they were doing. So yeah, that's what it was.
Absolutely, man. So I want you to talk to us now about leading up to a big debate that happens in New York City between an up-and-coming young brother on the ranks of Team Kemet known as Sarah Sunseti, and an up-and-coming Israelite known as Nasi Yashuvel from Shema Israel. This is around the time that I had been I'm trying to find a word that would truly capture where I was at that time, but I want to also be true. I was going to say I was missing in action, but the reality is during a lot of the early 2000s, I had pretty much virtually renounced Torah. You know, I had literally lost my way. I was running into Israelites left and right, and they'd be like, "Hey, that's Abdiel. Yo, Abdiel, what's up? Where you at? When you gonna come back?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back, man." And I never come back. But I remember being on a job in Jersey at that time. I'm working as an EMT, right?
Right.
I'm working. I still got my EMT badge to this day. You know, I'm working as an EMT, and I'm in Jersey, and I remember seeing a flyer. Yo, shout out to King Simon, saw that as flyer guy. This dude not only makes sure that flyers go out in New York, flyers are in Jersey. So I see a flyer for Sarah Sunseti versus Nasi Yashuvel. And I said, wait, hold on a damn minute. Is that Yashuvel that I know from Shema? So I looked closely at the flyer and I said, yo. So I remember inviting a couple of people from the job, but only one coming. And when I went that day, I saw all of y'all. And it was like, for me, a reunion because I haven't seen y'all at that time in almost 10 years, I think.
Right.
Almost 7-8 years. So I want you to explain to us from your eye view, how is it that y'all came in that environment?
All right. We the leader of the place where I was attending at that time to Shema Yisrael was his son is Yeshua. So he was like, listen, I want to go up there, and I want to show strength, and because you know at that time the Kemet and Israel stuff was heating up. You know, they was gaining some traction. They had some real dynamic Team Kemet. They had some real dynamic speakers, some people that spoke with a lot of force, and Israelites wasn't up to par on their homework. You know what I mean? So a lot of times these guys were looking good in some of the stuff they were saying, you know, because when you're not, we concentrated on Christianity for so long. Kemet just came out of the blue, you know, and at that time, the general, Sarah Sunseti, was, you know, he still is charismatic, you know, was able to shut anything down with the way he related, and, you know, he'll call you an MFer, and, you know what I mean? He just had that kind of like flair. So he's going against Nasi Yashuvel. Prince Paul was like, look, I want to bring the drums up there. Blase, blase, blah. You know what I mean? So, you know, we got it together. We brought the drums up there. We got the drummers up there. And I mean, you was there. You felt that energy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And once them drums started rocking, we started singing, "We are the Israelites, the mighty, mighty Israelites, the mighty, mighty Israelites." Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are and what we are doing. So we tell them that we are the Israelites, the mighty, mighty Israelites.
Chief, I know you a tough man. I know you a tough man, but Chief, we gotta let the people know what that sounded like. Come on, Chief, let's get it out, man. Let's get it out. I need the people to know what that song sounded like. We are the
Israelites,
mighty,
the mighty, mighty Israelites. everywhere we go. So you gotta imagine this. Now, at that time, even though we were at odds with the brothers from Uptown in our ideologies and philosophies, we understood the greater good. So Hashar and the brothers from, what is the organization?
AOC and Lions of Israel.
And the Lions of Israel were there. So when we started singing the song, they had ram horns and they were singing along, and Israel came together. You know what I mean?
That's a fact. That's
a fact. They had.
And just for somebody in the audience, this is before coming on trial. We talking about Sarah Sutin versus Nasi Yashuvel. That's 2.5 years before coming on trial.
Yeah, coming on. So it's crazy in there. The drums, even Seti is bouncing off the drums. He's not understanding, you know what I mean? And Sarnetta said, he said they brought the spirit, you know what I mean? Like they changed the spirit up in here. Yeah. And from that moment on, Seti was done. He could not recover from just the spirit of Israel coming together. And it was a testament to show that in unity there's strength. Even though we had our differences, the brothers definitely, you know what I mean, they supported. And I think there was already some type of relationship with Yashuvel and with the brothers from AOC, if I'm not mistaken. So at that point, it was like Israel was in there in full effect. We was in there deep, and we brought that spirit in there, and kaboom, that was the first loss that Sarah Seti took in that type of setting. You know what I mean? It was clear.
That's a fact.
You know, afterwards, Anka Kent and all them try to say it was pseudo, and what the brother was saying was pseudo and all that, but
they fact checked him after the debate and realized he didn't really win. Yeah.
You know, every time we win, that's what they try to do. They want to fact check and say everything that we said is pseudo.
I want to make this clear because, again, we was there. We was in the building. Do you remember, Chief, at one point, Yashuvel had called out Seti for using coke, and he played an audio of Sarah Sutin Seti admitting to using coke. Do you remember at that moment, it was pandemonium in the building, and everybody was looking around, and I already saw y'all getting in formation. Getting ready for if it go down. Talk to us about that moment when Yashuvel called out Seti for using coke, played the audio, and then the pandemonium. Take the people to that moment.
It's just, you know, we always had this mentality, you know, if one is in it, that we all in it, you know. So don't stop to ask the question why, but it's to do or die. You gotta that's always the mentality we were brought up with. So once we seen that that wasn't appreciated and it looked like people was huffing and puffing, you know, you could huff and puff, but you know, just that's all you can do, huff and puff. You know what I mean? So we start talking, and you know, if anything go down, we know what we got to do. That's just the way we move. I mean, but I think every organization, any real organization of men, have that. I seen that with the Moors and Sarnetta. You know what I mean? Right. You know, every real organization of men that got men with strength and power, they just know, you know what I mean, like enough talking. Ain't no like Birdman said, ain't no more talking. You know what I mean? That's you finished, you done, you know what I mean? No more talking. Put some respect on my name. You know what I mean? So that's how that goes.
Fast forward, coming on trial happens. There's a lot of controversy about who won, who didn't win. And immediately after that is when I came on the scene and became a little bit more prominent. And then Sarnetta had set up a meeting between myself and Sarah Seti. I remember at that time, me and you were starting to get particularly very close.
Right.
And I remember coming to you with everything that I was doing. And I came to you and I said, yo, man, I'm going to debate Seti. And he was like, oh, word? I'm going to come through. But the day that we was debating, it just so happened you was working and you couldn't get off. So you said,
Yeah,
I'll
it
tell
was
you
early
what.
in the day. I thought it was gonna be like later in the
Right.
day.
So you said, I remember you saying, I tell you what, I'm gonna send my son. So you sent your son, your daughter even accompanied, and as we know, that meeting with me and Seti
That was a
turned out to
classic.
be very, very volatile.
Right.
Now, your children were there with a video camera recording. I called you after to tell you everything that happened. But I want to say for this moment in time, Chief, forget about anything that I told you. If you can, recount for us what your children told you about that meeting between me and Seti when Sarnetta, Red Pill, and Brother Perry were all in that same building together. Talk to us about that.
Well, then particularly my son was like, Avdiel, he leaped over the thing, and the other guy, you know, because he didn't really know Seti, or he said the other guy was just.
And by the way, guys, Avdiel is me. They know me before the whole name Zion Lexx. So when y'all hear him say Avdiel, that's me.
Yeah. So he's like, Avdiel just jumped over the thing, and the camera fell down, and they had to hold him back. And the other guy said, well, what the other guy was doing? So he was just standing there. He was in the back. He didn't want to, this coming from a young teenager. I was like, you sure? He was like, yeah, he just standing there. He didn't. I don't think he wanted anything to do with that. He said there's a few people had to hold back Abdel.
Now
he said I even tried to hold him back, but I couldn't. He was too strong.
Now I remember apologizing to you.
Right.
That my anger got the best of me, and I started to turn up because your children were there. And they were in that volatile situation, even though they were good. I apologize to you because I would never want to put anybody's children in any environment that could go crazy, right? But I never told you that, and I'm going to use this opportunity to tell you, for a while I was kind of ashamed.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I was ashamed, and I was ashamed that, here I am recounting the matter on Sarnetta's platform, on other platforms, and I'm finding myself bragging about essentially chasing Seti ass around the room.
Right.
But at the end of the day, your children were there. Now they were safe and they were good, but in hindsight, looking back, you get older, Chief.
Right.
When this happened, I was about 35, 36. I'm now 43.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, hindsight is 20/20. When you get older, you look at things differently. So as the years progressed and I look back at my actions after it, I became ashamed because I said, here I am on Sarnetta TV, eventually even on my own platform and on other platforms, bragging about how I chased Seti around the room. All the while I got my brother's children there. So I say this to you again, that, from me to you, man, I deeply apologize because not only did I feel bad immediately after that this happened while they were there, but even years later, I felt ashamed that here I am bragging about a volatile situation that if it went real crazy, your children were there. Right. So I want to use this opportunity to tell you, brother to brother, that I apologize once again, man.
Hey, that's the water under the bridge already, bro. That's not even, I don't even think about that. So I know sometimes our emotions could get the best of us, and that's what it is. So to me, I didn't take that personal.
Definitely, man. So the next thing I want to ask you as we attempt to try to bring some of this to a close, and you're a person with so much history that it's impossible. We're almost 2 hours in. It's impossible to do a one-part interview of you. Right. So for me, I'm calling this part one. But I know you're going to be interviewed by other people, right? So for me, this is part one. I know I need another one with you. So
definitely, whenever you want me to.
Absolutely.
As many interviews as you've done for me, like when I bring you in, you all over my channel. So this is a delight. Definitely, whenever you need me to.
Thank you. So in bringing part one to close, I want to say to you that, after a while, things occur in our community where, we decide after a certain time, either based on situations and also just based on self-growth and evolution, that we realize that in order to grow, sometimes you have to actually leave the nest. So it's
Right.
also around this time that you and I begin to segue and leave the nest, right?
Right.
You left earlier than me, and I came back, and then I left. And then
Right.
when you left, you become part of a new congregation known as DCB, which is an acronym for Da'at Chakma Binah, which is where
Right.
you're at to this day. So if
Uh-huh.
you can, explain to the community how you guys run your services there. What do you personally think is the goal of your particular organization, DCB? What's the goal of the organization? And if you can, name drop the address. So, a lot of people visit New York. New York is the mecca of America. So most people, when they come to America, they want to eventually come to New York, Cali,
Absolutely.
or Florida. So having
Right.
said that, make sure you drop the address as well. But tell us about DCB. Tell us about your services. What's unique about your services, if anything at all? And also talk to us about the goal of DCB. What do you think is the goal of DCB as an organization?
All right. So, just as you know, many of us left Shema Yisrael. That was 2005, January 2005. We created Beit Hak Mabina. Now, Beit Hak Mabina was actually a YouTube channel that I had, that because during that time, remember, there was a lot of the debates, which all with SETI and you and Polite and all the things that were happening. So now, when that was happening, I said, let me create this channel called the House of Knowledge, Wisdom, and Understanding, Beit Hak Mabina, right? So that was going to be something separate from what we already had at Shema, because Shema had a channel, Shema Yisrael had a channel for services, and I always had my Uzziel channel where I did my secular stuff, interviews and stuff like that. But I said, I want to keep this because everything is kind of changing. The demographic is changing. These debates are really hot. I could bring people on this platform. I don't have to mix this with that. So that was there. So when we left, I already had that YouTube channel. And us as brothers who were there, because Beit DCB is not only me. I might be the person who you see talking, opening up services, but the leader, the spiritual leader of Beit Hak Mabina is my brother, Chief Prince Jebiel Ben Yissaskar. And we got elders like Chief Kohath, Chief Elquana. Those are our main three elders. And then we have liaisons and advisors like Nasik Zarishad Ben Yehuda. And we got my brothers like Chief Naftali Ben Dan, Samal Zakar Ben Dan, Chief Meku, More Arani, and myself, Rabbi Chief Benyamin. It's a lot more brothers, but I'm giving you like the core of the teachers and the elders and everybody who is there, that works hard as a unit together. And definitely our teachings is based on Torah, right? The first 5 books and what we know also as the Old Testament, what we call the Tanakh, right? Which is an acronym, an acronym for Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim, right? The Torah, the prophets, and the writings. So that's what we concentrate our teaching on. We do not. The only time we will go into the New Testament is to show some type. That's still our style, to show some type of contradiction. I'm not going to lie to anyone. That's what we do. Although we don't do that much anymore, because I think people pretty much have an understanding of what we stand on. We try to read the Torah every week in the native language, which is the Hebrew, and we go through a Sidra, which is or Parashah, which are separated into the different weeks of the year. Last week was Teruma, which was talking about the setup of the tabernacle and the articles of the tabernacle. And so those are the services that we do. We try to, every year improve on our lessons. We try to use electronics now to show people a picture of what they're seeing. In the afternoons, we go through maybe like books of prophecy. We're doing this right now. We're opening up the book of Amos. We already went through like 1st, 2nd Samuel's. We went through Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. We just went through Obadiah. We went through the book of Judges. We went through the book of Proverbs. So our goal right now is to go through the entire Tanakh. That's our goal, right? We do the Torah every year. Right? We cover the first 5 books, but a lot of times, a lot of those other books are neglected. People don't go into those other books. So we make it our business to continue in a serious round year. We go into the different prophets and we try to complete. We're trying to complete the entire Tanakh, basically. I don't know what we're going to do when we get to Psalm, but we'll figure it out when we get there.
All right. So as I noted, you have way too much history to surmise your history in a 2 or even 3 hour video. There's going to be a couple of parts to this, obviously. So I have one last question for you that should be impactful for everybody that's watching. Also, family, make sure that you throw up the video and share the live. Also, make sure, guys, that you subscribe to Uzziel Lewy on YouTube. That's his personal YouTube channel, Uzziel Lewy. While you're at it, also subscribe to DCB channel. You can go on YouTube and type in DCB channel. That's the channel of the congregation that he belongs to. Make sure you go. That's where they do their weekly services. But as I noted, he also has his own YouTube channel, which is called Uzziel Lewy. Please, moderators.
Chief, so
yes.
I forgot to answer a question. We, DCB, BEIT, DCB on YouTube. You can, we are open for services every Shabbat or every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. On YouTube. Right now, we kind of have a skeleton crew out there, so we won't advise you to come out to us. But on YouTube, we're actually on from 8 o'clock in the morning. We have programming like a real channel, on the Shabbat day, so you could get on, but the actual live services begin at 11 and 11 to 2, and then usually from 4 to sundown. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue. We are located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York, right on Hamilton Avenue, right underneath the BQE. If you know that area over there, Industry City, coming down into the area of Home Depot and IKEA, that's where we're located, coming down in that area.
Fact. Right across from the train station. Fact.
Yes.
And literally right under the Gowanus Bridge.
There you go. The Gowanus Expressway. Yeah.
Gowanus Expressway. So the last question that I have for you that I'm hoping will be impactful for everybody that can hear you is, what does it mean to be an Israelite to you, right? You've been in this way of life well over 30 years. What is an Israelite? What should an Israelite embody in terms of quality? And where do you see the current estate of the Israelite community? So it's a 3-part question.
Yeah.
The first question is, what is an Israelite? Right?
Right.
Go ahead.
And the second question, go ahead, repeat.
The second question is, what do you think an Israelite should embody? What are those qualities that an Israelite should have about him or her? And the third and last question is, how do you see the current estate of the overall Israelite community, whether it be Messianic or non-Messianic?
And to me, an Israelite is, naturally known that we are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But also an Israelite is he who believes in the Creator and walks in the law, statutes, and commandments that he left here on record for us to do. Those are the first things that you have to understand. And when those things come, the keeping of the Sabbath, the keeping of the holy days, the honoring of parents, the not bowing down to idols, the basic covenant that the Most High God made with us when Moses came down from the mountain with those tablets, and those tablets of testimony are kept in the Ark of the Covenant as the basically the agreement that we made with the Most High God. So, and in the simplest form, an Israelite is a person who those 10 words that we see that we call the 10 Commandments, at the minimum, you're keeping that, because that's part of the agreement that we entered with God, and that's what's kept in the Ark of the Covenant. Those 10 words, as we know it, right? Israelites shall embody discipline, integrity, being faithful to his God, and being loyal to his family and to his brothers who are in the same like mind, to be compassionate and also to be merciful. A lot of times, as Israelite, we do all the other stuff, the being tough and doing all that stuff, but sometimes we're not merciful enough. And if we think about the Creator and how merciful he's been towards us, then if we look at things in terms of that, then we could begin to have more mercy for people and be able and be willing to listen to people. This week, getting off the subject, and because I know you gotta go, but we went out and we fed the poor. We went to Bedford Avenue and Atlantic, and then we came down on Lincoln and Ralph, right in our hood, and we gave food out to the poor. And the experience to me was, I seen a lot of young people that were out there that were just destitute. You know what I'm saying? That were downtrodden. Young people. I was expecting to see middle-aged man with drug problems, but these are young people, right? And something went wrong that they ended up in a predicament that way, right? And but if you're not compassionate, you're gonna just see young strappy men and be like, man, why y'all out here begging for food? You know what I mean? Why you out here, man? You don't know a person's situation. You know what I mean? You don't know what's going on in a person's mind. So you have to be merciful being an Israelite, because God, the Creator, Yah, is merciful towards us. So those are, that's one of the things that sometimes we don't practice, and we have to learn, and in terms of, you said the state that we're at right now, I think that Israel right now is in a state of confusion. There's a lot of doctrines out there that are separating us, and there are a lot of self-made teachers who are putting titles of teachers on themselves, but are not qualified to teach God's people. And what they really are doing is leading God's people astray. There's certain schools of understanding that you understand and already, but there's certain confusing doctrines out there that are sending people into a loop, and that are causing people to just be disenchanted and just walk away, because everybody wants. The problem right now is that everybody wants to be a leader, and everybody's ego is kicking in, and this is just sending Israel into a tailspin. Do I think we could recover from it? Yes. But it is up to the people in the audience to understand and know what you're listening to, and determine whether or not what you're listening to is the truth. And the only way you can do that is by reading yourself, and not taking the word of what you hear people say only, but also studying and gaining understanding on your own. So the state of Israel right now is in a bit of confusion, but I think that we could recover from it. And I feel like the creator of heaven and earth will help us all to get to the point where we need to get to. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, you did an amazing job, Chief. As I said, this is just part one. There's so many things that we can come together to sit down and talk about. It's impossible to cover your history in just one part. So we're certainly going to come back again sometime very soon to cover more. Just hearing you right now is, bringing out a more sentimental tone for myself, because, we've been in this for so long. We've been in this so long that we've seen the elders when they were still young. We're now watching them pass. We're now watching them die.
Yep.
That's a long time to be in something. To watch your teacher when they're in their prime, and then now you're literally watching some of them die.
Absolutely.
To have that much time invested in an organization, in a movement, in a spiritual way of life, it does something to you. You realize that what I'm about is more than speech. What I'm about is more than, what looks and appearances may be. What I'm about is really supposed to be the things that I'm speaking and the things that I'm teaching should be worked together in perfect unison concert. We should marry our thoughts, our ideas with our actions. And I definitely got to say, and I'm proud. This is a proud moment for me that while I know a lot of people and while I know a lot of Israelites, you are certainly one of those Israelites, brother, that from the time I know you, you have always lived this. Because you are human, I'm sure that there are moments in your life where you've made mistakes or even blatant errors. We're human, right? But one thing I got to say about you, and especially to my audience, which might be different from the community that we come from about you, is that this brother has always been 10 toes down. He's a real brother. He's a stand-up brother. He's somebody that I love. You're somebody you're somebody that I admire. You're somebody that I deeply respect. And with that being said, guys, stay tuned for part 2, because as he already knows, there's so much that we didn't even grace. There are so many things that we can come together to talk about in terms of going into the book and really, really digging into the scriptures to bring out some of this knowledge, as well as to bring you guys inside information about the Israelite movement before 1969. We didn't even talk about the Israelites from Brooklyn that went to Chicago.
Right.
We didn't talk about Jeff Fort. We didn't talk about Nasi Yaakov. We didn't talk about Cohen Levy. All right? We didn't talk about Cohen Mikael.
Right.
We didn't talk about Crown Prince Zerishadai, Nasik, Katan Yehuda. All right? We didn't talk about the commandment keepers of Harlem. So there's so much that we are going to come back to speak about. But for now, I simply say to you, I'm honored to have this opportunity to interview you. You're usually the brother that always makes sure that you extend your availability to people who have history and a legacy, and you are always the one to say, I'm going to give you a spotlight, I'm going to give you a platform. So it's my honor today to spotlight you and give you a platform.
Torah about my brother, I appreciate it. And anytime you need me, just call me, let me know.
Likewise, man. So to all the family, could you tell us how we can find you on social media?
Yeah, you could on Facebook, I'm Uzziel Lewy. On YouTube, Uzziel Lewy. On I want to say on Instagram, I'm Uz Production. So that's UZZ underscore PROD. That's UZZ underscore PROD. And that's all the social media that I have. But you can also check out the Mishpaka Drummers. That's a group of drummers that I also produce the videos and as part of my Uzziel Lewy production. So if you see the Mishpaka Drummers, the video and the audio. I'm also into that. I record audio and video and do all types of stuff, photographer, all that stuff. So I'm into the technology. That's
absolutely, absolutely, man. So also, I know that you've been working on a documentary of recent, of which when you have Israelites involved in those type of endeavors, the first thing that's needed is for the community to support these people. This brother, as you guys heard me mention moments ago in this interview, he was always known not just as a teacher, he's now known even as a leader, because his official title, which we didn't even talk about, and we'll go into more of that in part 2, is that his title is Chief Uzziel. He's a leader in the community. He's a Rosh. A Rosh is a leader. He's a chief man. That's a title that came with a lot of years of work, a lot of years of following orders, a lot of years of following great men, and a lot of years of just being a loyal, genuine brother who's about his people, and most of all, who's about his God. So I'm going to ask the community to support your recent endeavor to complete this documentary. So could you please share with us your Cash App info so that we can donate to you to help support your documentary efforts?
My Cash App info is the money symbol UZZI940. I'm going to put it in the room. That way everybody could see it. There you go.
All right. And as soon as
it's coming in under Mishpaka Drummers. That's one of the many channels that I got the Mishpaka Drummers. So let me put my name once again, Uzziel. Cash App. You see it up there?
Yes, sir.
I just threw it there. Yeah.
Yep. I even put it up. I pinned it on the screen. Uzi940.
Yep.
$ Uzi940. So family, this is a brother that does a lot of hard work. He's working on a documentary. He has a lot of history. If you go to his channel, Uzziel Lewy, you'll see the many, many Israelite elders that he's interviewed. And he's interviewed some of the greatest elders with many, many more to come. With that being said, Chief Uzziel, we've arrived at the end of part 1. May Yah willing, we're able to come back again and do part 2. Shalom and Lila Tov to you.
Shalom, shalom. Hallelujah. Lila Tov.
All right. Hallelujah. Lila Tov. All right, family. To everybody, you guys want to see me interview some of the more prolific leaders and teachers in the Israelite community who, first and foremost, have experience and time, right? Those who are tenured, right? A lot of the people who are in the Israelite community today that you guys know of, most of those guys are the newer generation, just so you guys know, right? Most of the people who are popular today in the Israelite community, these are people who've been around from around, 2007, right? But there are many more like myself, like Chief Uzziel, and like our teachers that have been around now in the Israelite community for 3 decades, 30 years. Those are the people who we need to start interviewing now, because what we say about these huge personalities, these huge influential leaders, is that when an elder passes, a library goes with them. When an elder passes, a library goes with them. So those are the people that I'm particularly interested in interviewing at this point, because I'm hoping, God willing, that some of the younger generation, they still have some time, so I don't have to rush to interview them. But I definitely want to interview those who've been around for a while and give you access to histories that you could only get from people that have been around for many, many years. And with that being said, guys, we're going to close the live. Make sure, guys, if you enjoyed this video, thumb up the video. This is your first time here, subscribe. And don't forget, support the home team. Also, guys, if you enjoyed tonight's lecture and interview, Make sure you also support your brother, Zion Lexx. Send a donation to the platform as well. With that being said, guys, I'm going to be doing a lot of exposés this month. As you know, secularly, this month is referred to as Black History Month, even though for us, every day is Black History. Even though for me and my channel, I celebrate Black History every day. When I go live, right, I'm talking about all areas and facets of Black history. If you study my body of work, I'm talking about Black history year round, not just February. But during this month, I'm going to oversaturate the idea in honor of this month. So look out for those. With that being said, guys, have a great night. Shalom to you all, and hope to see you very, very soon. Lala Tov and Shalom.
Still haven't tried the Locklicious all natural hair care product line? Well, let's hear what the Lock community has to say about it.
I love how it sprays and how it fills, you guys. Like, it feels so good. And it smells amazing, you guys.
The Lock and Twist moisturizer was really good for me. The hydration mist was phenomenal.
This is bomb, baby. I was really impressed, kind of blown away, and I think that if you're struggling, definitely go check them out.
And check out the 5-star reviews on our website. So, what are you waiting for? Go to locklicious.com to start treating your crown like royalty.
If you want to have a better view on how the Bible looks at women in its proper context, then you should get these two books. Matriarchs of the Covenant, written by Abdil Ben Levi, popularly known as Zion Lexx. This is a masterpiece.